Welcome to NBA Jam Tatman QC on Fire Edition. Boom shakalaka!
Happy little games. When it comes to classic arcade titles from the mid-1980s whose legacy is still being felt today, then look no further than the absolutely fantastic Arkanoid. This block-breaking arcade game definitely has its roots in the early 1970s, and also, thanks to a certain 1980s sci-fi cult classic, takes everything that was great about this concept and cranks it up to 11. Today, we are taking a look at the updated game, which features a lot of hot ball-on-wall action with enough levels to choke a horse. What is the connection between this game and the movie Tron? What arcade game did Arkanoid shamelessly rip off? How does the iconic Nolan Bushnell factor into this game? What amazing secret is hidden deep inside the arcade version of Arkanoid? Let's find out as we learn about the history of Arkanoid. When it comes to bat and ball games, you would think we would have to go back to the year of 1976 with the arcade game Breakout. But in actuality, we have to go back to 1972 with the release of Atari's iconic arcade game Pong. It was one of the earliest arcade video games available, and it was designed by Alan Alcorn based on a concept from Nolan Bushnell. Mr. Bushnell had seen a demo of an electronic ping pong game being run on the Magnavox Odyssey, which was the very first home video game console. However, Pong was such a huge hit when it was released in the arcades, it spawned not only a number of imitators, but a patent infringement lawsuit from Magnavox as well. Mr. Alcorn has stated numerous times in interviews that Pong wasn't originally meant for sale, but just a proof of concept. Mr. Bushnell threw all that aside because he thought it was good enough to release in the arcades. After weighing his options, Mr. Bushnell decided to settle with Magnavox out of court in June 1976. Bushnell's lawyer felt they could win. However, he estimated legal costs of $1.5 million, which would have exceeded Atari's funds. Magnavox offered Atari an agreement to become a licensee for $1.5 million, payable in 8 installments. In 1974, the arcade game Clean Sweep was released by Ramtech. This game sees the player use a paddle to hit the ball up towards the playfield of dots, which disappear as the ball moves through them. The overall goal of the game is to achieve a clean sweep by erasing all of the dots. This was a huge hit back in 1974 and sold over 3,500 arcade cabinets. With great success comes great knockoffs, and Pong was no different. Mr. Bushnell wanted to do something about the rampant copying of his idea, so he decided to take the concept of Pong and turn it into a single-player game where the player would use a paddle at the bottom trying to break through the various bricks at the top. This new game would be designed by Nolan Bushnell and Steve Bristow as a means to counteract the various Pong clones that were on the market. Similar to Pong, this new game, rechristened Breakout because you are apparently breaking out of prison, which is what the artwork would have you believe. It's also a bit ironic since many video game players would also find themselves imprisoned a number of years later. The concept proved successful, but Mr. Bushnell did not like how many chips were required to run the newer Atari arcade games. Future Apple creator Steve Jobs was working under Mr. Bushnell and had assigned Steve with the task of designing a prototype utilizing fewer chips. Mr. Jobs was offered $750 with a bonus for every transistor logic chip he had successfully removed. In just 4 days, Mr. Jobs and his friend Steve Wozniak had designed a version of Pong that used only 30 chips. Since they were able to meet the deadline, Mr. Jobs was awarded a $5,000 bonus which he kept secret from Wozniak. Once again, the game was a huge commercial success and was the 5th highest earning arcade game of 1976. 11,000 cabinets were sold and it generated $60 million in revenue adjusted for inflation. It also sold over 1.5 million copies on the Atari VCS alone by 1983. However, it was also widely cloned, similar to Pong. As a side note, Breakout directly influenced Steve Wozniak's design for the Apple II computer. He has stated in various interviews that a lot of the features of the Apple II went in because of his designs for Breakout. He had designed it in hardware, but now he wanted to write it in software, which was capable on the Apple II. Basically, all the game features were put in just so I could show off the game I was familiar with, Breakout, at the Homebrew Computer Club. It was the most satisfying day of my life when I demonstrated Breakout totally written in BASIC. It seemed like a huge step to me. After designing hardware arcade games, I knew that being able to program them in BASIC was going to change the world. Breakout was also influential to a number of other individuals, including Tomohiro Nishikado. Mr. Nishikado had stated that Breakout was the original inspiration behind his smash arcade game Space Invaders, which was released in 1978. He wanted players to feel the same tension from destroying targets one small piece at a time. This brings us to 1986 and the creation of Arkanoid. The game was created by Taito's Akira Fujita and Hiroshi Sugino. These two were lifelong friends and were working for the company of Taito. The idea came from a client who suggested to Taito's higher-ups that perhaps a new block-breaking arcade game could be a success due to the genre starting to see an upturn in popularity. The era of Breakout and its various clones and knockoffs had seen a serious decline over the last number of years, so it was thought that a new, updated version would be the way to go. However, the entire design team didn't see the merits but went along anyway. Taito ordered its developers to submit proposals for the game, and of the dozens that were proposed, only 2 were chosen. One was from Mr. Sugino and the other was from Mr. Fujita. These 2 designs that were chosen were ultimately combined, with Fujita designing and planning the game, and Sugino was put in charge of graphics and screen layouts. He was a huge fan of sci-fi movies, and Tron in particular had a great influence on him. He loved the neon aesthetics as well as the design of the Master Control program, which was the basis for the final boss of the game, who was known as Doe. This new, updated version of Breakout would feature more levels, actual color graphics, and not just strips of colored cellophane placed over a black and white monitor, updated graphics, power-ups, and a catchy theme song that still lives rent-free in my head. Speaking of the graphics, the various geometric-like power-ups and enemies were hand-drawn from 3-dimensional models before being converted into sprites. Fujita had insisted that the blocks remain simple and monochromatic to make them easier to see, despite others insisting they be more 3-dimensional and with more colors. He had worked on this game for 16 hours a day, designing the levels and playtesting it so that when he would sleep at night, he would close his eyes and hear the ball clanging back and forth. I encountered something similar to this when I got Tetris for the Game Boy and played it so much I could see the bricks falling when I would close my eyes. This game was probably the first successful retro remake, and it truly is a masterpiece. From project conception to play location testing in Japan was a grand total of 1 month. A 1-month development time with initially only 4 people, including 2 additional programmers. Hisayoshi Ogura was in charge of the fantastic sound and music. Mr. Sugino has stated that the deadline and schedule was absolutely murderous. He also noted that the PCB that was used was low spec because the company wanted to pursue an ultra-low cost. It was extremely well received in Japan and was released into arcades by Taito in July of 1986. It was distributed in North America by Romstar later that same year, and it was a huge success. Mr. Fujita was married shortly after the release of this game, and upon his honeymoon in Hawaii found an American playing Arkanoid. Arkanoid broke its way into arcades in 1986. This was released by the hitmakers themselves at Taito, which is a block breaker or ball buster arcade game. As far as the story goes, The player controls a cradle-like ship known as the Vase, which has been attacked by a mysterious entity from space named Doe. This game was created long before Homer Simpson's annoyed grunt swept the nation, along with Bart Simpson telling us to munch on his shorts. In actuality, DOE was an acronym for Dominate Over Hour. The game is controlled by a simple paddle which was used previously in Pong and Breakout and truly helps the game reach a whole different level as opposed to utilizing a standard joystick. By controlling this paddle, you move it side to side, hitting a ball into a number of different colored bricks which will destroy them. Your spacecraft, known as the Vase, behaves similar to a standard wall and ball game, unless of course you are granted one of the many power-ups. More on those in just a moment. The bricks that you destroy will vary in point value depending on the color. These colored bricks can be destroyed with only one hit, but there are a couple of exceptions. The silver bricks start with 2 hits to destroy and increase by 1 every 8 stages. Gold bricks, however, are totally indestructible. In addition to the lavish colors and fantastic stage design are the power-ups. Next to the spinner dial on the cabinet, you'll notice a fire button, which is obviously something you wouldn't find in the arcade version of Breakout. The game is littered with power-ups, which really adds to the gameplay experience. The red capsule with the L is a laser, allowing your vase to be transformed, allowing you to shoot the bricks instead. The blue E capsule will enlarge the size of your player. The last time I took a blue capsule, I experienced something similar as well. The green C capsule allows you to catch the ball, and pressing the fire button will release it. The orange S capsule will slow everything down. You can also collect multiple slow capsules which will have a cumulative effect. The purple B capsule allows you to break out and exit the stage immediately, allowing you to advance to the next level. The light blue D capsule will cause the ball to be split into 3 different balls which can be kept afloat at the same time. Keep in mind though that no colored capsules will fall if you have more than one ball in play. And finally, there is the gray P capsule, which grants you an extra life. Similar to Breakout, once you destroy all the bricks, you advance to the next level and a new level design. There are 33 in total, with you having to face off against the evil, dastardly Doe on level 33. To defeat this nefarious character, you have to hit him 16 times with your ball. You also have to watch out for the various projectiles that he spits out of his mouth, which, if you are hit, you will die. Keep in mind that if you are unsuccessful at defeating Doe on stage 33 and run out of lives, then the game is over because you cannot continue. If you are successful, a pleasant ending screen is shown and the game is over. The arcade game did have one hidden secret that was taken out at the last minute. As I've mentioned in previous videos, creators were often not given credit for their work due to poaching from other companies. Buried deep inside the arcade ROMs is a hidden staff credits ending sequence which shows actual photographs of all the people associated with the making of this game. There was also a functioning stage editor that was probably for the people who were designing the various levels. Regardless, it's still very cool to see. Now, even though the game ends after the final fight with Doe, thanks to the wonderfully wacky cheats available in the MAME emulator, it is possible to keep going. By activating the warp cheat, you can bypass the fight with Doe and keep on playing. Most of these are just scatter blocks, but it is possible to play through them. After round 129, rather than fight Doe again, you are taken to something called Round 1, which is a broken heart. Also, in the word round, there is an extra D for some reason. When the arcade game was released worldwide, it came in 2 different flavors, a full upright and the much more obscure cocktail version. Just as it was in Japan, The game was a huge hit here in the States, and a staggering 20 official conversions were released for computers and consoles all across the world. I will get to those in just a bit. In 1987, Romstar couldn't wait for Taito to release the official sequel to Arkanoid, so they put together Tournament Arkanoid. This is basically Arkanoid 1.5 with identical power-ups and gameplay, but all of the levels are brand new. Also that same year, we got the official sequel to Arkanoid entitled Arkanoid Revenge of Dough, or simply Arkanoid 2. The gameplay is largely the same, and the majority of the power capsules also return. You do get some new ones, including Twin, which will split your player into two, Reduce, which will cause your paddle to shrink, Illusion, which will leave a ghost trail behind, and Random, which will cause, surprise surprise, a random power-up including splitting the ball into 40 separate balls. It's a pretty cool feature. This time there are actually 65 distinct stages, meaning you have to play through the entire game twice to see each new stage. The game features brand new stages and an all-new boss at the very end. There are even regenerative bricks that will reappear just a few seconds after blowing them to smithereens. Like the original, this was converted to a number of home systems as well. Believe it or not, the series took a 10-year hiatus, but it bounced back with two brand new games in the year of 1997. The first game was Arkanoid Do It Again for the Super Nintendo. This game does use the standard Super Nintendo pad, but it also features support for the Super Nintendo mouse, which played extremely well. The game features 99 levels, with the final boss once again being Dough. There are a number of brand new power-ups, and the graphics are fantastic. The sound effects are arcade authentic, and they sound really good. Along with having to take out Dough, there are a number of mini-bosses leading up to the final battle. There is even a multiplayer mode which works out good, involving both a turn-based option as well as two players simultaneously. Arkanoid also returned to the arcade with Arkanoid Returns, released by Taito in 1997. The gameplay is essentially identical, although the graphics have been given an updated shaded look and more 3D effects were added to the capsules and enemy objects. The game features brand new levels, updated power-ups, sounds, and music. There are only 50 levels to complete this time around, and there is no boss at the end of the game. If I had one complaint, is that the game plays a lot faster than the previous Arkanoid, which in my opinion was just fast enough. Arkanoid Returns also was released on the PlayStation 1 in 1999. This featured 50 new levels for the arcade mode and also a campaign mode with 100 new levels. In addition to all these other extras, a level editor was also included. Once again, the series would lay dormant until 2007, when the series made its debut on the Nintendo DS with the appropriately titled Arkanoid DS. When it was released in Japan, it was bundled with the paddle controller, which is a spinner mimicking the original arcade game's knob. The game uses both screens for one giant display, which definitely takes some getting used to. You can also use the D-pad or the stylus for controlling your player. In addition to the various power-ups is a pretty cool quest mode in which you can attempt to complete any level in any order while trying to complete specific tasks for each round. It even has a multiplayer mode for up to 4 players via local wireless or online play. You can even modify what the blocks look like. The game uses excellent graphics and fantastic techno music that really gets your pulse jumping. Arkanoid Live was released in 2009 for Xbox Live Arcade. This featured a number of new updates to the original, such as cleaner graphics, new levels, and new game modes such as Versus and the standard arcade mode. It also sported a number of new add-on packs which helped the replay value. It was also released as Arkanoid Plus that same year as part of the Nintendo WiiWare online service. In 2017, Taito took its 2 biggest brands and mashed them together, resulting in Arkanoid vs. Space Invaders. This is a fantastic update to the original game that has elements from both Space Invaders and Arkanoid. The game started out life as a title for mobile phones that was re-released on the Switch and PlayStation 4. In certain modes, the blocks have been replaced with the Space Invader aliens. There are a number of worlds that the player traverses across, including 4 stages in each one. On the last stage of each world, you have to defeat a mini-boss. Once you do, you'll acquire a random power-up in the form of some of Taito's various properties, such as the Spy from Elevator Action, Nancy from Chase HQ, and even Sonic Blastman. It's a really cool update, and if you are a fan of either game, you should definitely check it out. The last new offering in the Arkanoid lineage thus far is Arkanoid Eternal Battle. You can play online with up to 4 people, and it features fantastic visuals and excellent sound. At Games also released a Taito Pinball Pack which featured tables based on Bubble Bobble and Arkanoid. Similar to Pong and Breakout, there were a number of unofficial clones and ripoffs. These appeared on various home computers and in arcades all across the world. One of my favorites would have to be Crackout on the Commodore 64. The official home releases were released in conjunction with Taito and Imagine Software over in Europe, whereas the 16-bit machines had a number of different developers. I can recall purchasing this at Toys R Us for my Commodore 64, and it came in a large flat container similar to a record album. What's cool about this is that inside was a comic strip giving you a little backstory on Arkanoid. Now, let's get on with the conversions.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
これ面白いな面白いじゃないか面白い面白いファミコンじゃねえか
コントローラー付きタイトアルカノイド新発売
面白いじゃねえか
The home version most people are familiar with is the NES version, and it's really good for one simple factor. It comes with its own spinner controller, giving it an authentic arcade feel. The graphics aren't quite as polished as some of the other versions, but the playability is spot on. There were some differences between the NES and Famicom versions, with the Famicom version having 3 less levels. It does feature some bonus rounds before the final fight with Doe. right out of the gate, we are smacked in the face with warm, queefy goodness thanks to the Apple II version. The graphics are decent enough, although the colors are a smattering of pastels, which tend to make your eyeballs bleed after playing for just a short while. The controls are also a bit sticky. The Atari 8-bit line of computers also received a version, and despite the muddy colors, it turned out pretty good. The sound effects are decent, but the speed of the game is a lot slower than the arcade version, but at least everything is smoothly animated. The Apple II GS version turned out really good with excellent graphics and music. The sampled sound effects are perfect, and you can even control your paddle with the mouse. What lets it down is the slower gameplay and not so smooth animation. Overall, it's pretty good, but not quite the best. The ZenX Spectrum port is really good, featuring nice colors, smooth gameplay, but only average sound. The laser fire in particular sounds a bit like popcorn farts, but overall, it's a good version of the game. It even features a good rendition of the intro tune. The Amstrad version is another excellent port with nice, vibrant colors and smooth animation. The audio is really good, especially the ping-pong sound that the ball makes. It's just a tad slower than the arcade game, otherwise it is fantastic. The original black and white Macintosh even received a version of Arkanoid. Do not let the black and white graphics fool you, because everything is extremely detailed and it plays fantastic. Similar to other versions, you get to use the mouse to control the paddle and it works out really good. You can also select your starting level from the first 20. You can also adjust the difficulty level, which I found quite enjoyable. When you have 3 balls bouncing and other enemies on screen at once, things do tend to get lost in the background, but overall, I was pleasantly surprised with how good this version turned out. The Thomson computer got a port of Arkanoid, and, sad to say, it's not very good. The animation is choppy and the colors are a bit garish on the screen. The sound effects are also extremely basic. The Atari ST version turned out really good with some excellent music and sound effects. The graphics are very close to the arcade game and it features some smooth animation. You can also use the mouse to control the paddle. The BBC Micro received a very good port with its colorful graphics and excellent playability. The sound effects and music are really good, but there is one thing that lets it down, which is the game gets too fast too quick.
That's what she said.
Otherwise, it's a really good conversion. There were actually 2 home releases for the Tandy Coco, with the first one being for the Coco 1 and 2. This one is not very good and looks more like Breakout than Arkanoid. The backgrounds are completely missing, having been replaced with a solid black color, and the blocks have that ugly pastel color to them as well. While the sound effects are not quite queef-worthy, they aren't very good either. Another version was released that same year for the Tandy Coco 3, and it turned out a whole lot better. Everything has been enhanced, from the graphics to the sound to the playability, bringing everything quite a bit closer to the arcade original. The MSX version looks very similar to the NES port, although it doesn't include a custom controller. The graphics, sounds, and playability are good, although everything is a bit on the slow side. The NEC PC line of computers that were released in Japan received an excellent port of Arkanoid. While the graphics are a bit grainy, everything else has been faithfully replicated, from the colors to the audio to the controls. It was also released for MS-DOS, running under CGA mode and utilizing the PC speaker for audio. Due to the CGA mode, everything is colored with pastels and the audio is 100% Grade A certified queef. However, the arcade's intro tune is so good I can listen to it out of a tin can. It plays really good, although the background graphics are missing completely, having been replaced with a solid black color. The good old Commodore 64 version actually had 2 versions in development. Ocean Software had obtained the rights and was planning on releasing their version, however a legal battle sprung up between Atari and Taito, with Atari claiming Arkanoid was a bit too similar to Breakout. Atari thought for sure that they were going to win the lawsuit, so Firebird Software approached Atari about releasing a version for the 64 if they ended up winning. Ultimately, Atari lost the lawsuit and Firebird had to cancel their title despite it being close to completion. Thankfully, the fine folks at the Games That Weren't were able to obtain this unknown gem for all of us to enjoy. The actual version from Ocean Software turned out really good as well, with Martin Galway's excellent tune on the title screen. Everything looks the part, although there is some collision detection at the ends of the paddle. Speaking of the paddle, the 64 version was able to not only use the joystick and mouse, but the paddle controllers from the Atari 2600, giving it that good old authentic arcade feeling. When it comes to the absolute best home conversion of Arkanoid that's not running under emulation, then look no further than the Amiga port. It is very close to being arcade perfect, but it goes one step further with a level select at the beginning of the game. With a lot of the home versions, the arcade intro is intact, but the music sounds so much better in this version. The graphics, colors, and especially the playability are all fantastic. Similar to the 64, you can use the joystick, mouse, or the Atari 2600 paddles. There were even a couple of different versions for Java, with the first one being released in 2002 and it looks decent enough, but a newer, upgraded version was released in 2006. As you would expect, this one features better graphics, sounds, and playability. A Flash version was also released in 2005 and that turned out really good as well. An extremely cool homebrew was released for the ColecoVision simply titled Arkanoid. This is a fantastic version of the game, and it even supports the roller controller. This is actually available in cartridge form, and just imagine being able to play this on an actual ColecoVision back in the day. And there you have it, folks, the long and comprehensive history of Arkanoid and all of its various games. This is a game that has its roots firmly planted in the 1970s, but it offered so much more when it was updated and became a sensation in the mid-1980s. Its legacy is still felt in video games to this day. If you've never had the chance to pilot a cradle-shaped ship, all the while bouncing balls and breaking bricks, be sure and give Arkanoid a shot. You'll be glad you did. If you like this video, be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Also, if you would like to support me on Patreon, please click the link below. If you would like to contribute but not sign up for my Patreon, you can always click the donate button up above. Thanks everyone for watching.